Hey Savvy people, it's Savvy Nick here, and today I want to take a moment and do a different type of a video, a Linux talk video, to just explore a Linux topic and some info on that topic. The topic is the ZFS and EXT4 partitioning schemes. Also, I'd like to take a moment and thank everyone who's subscribed to the channel. We've just reached over 100 subscribers, and I think that's so awesome. The channel now has over 50 videos, and I've really been enjoying making these videos and having people join in on the following. So it's really great to engage with everyone, and I really appreciate the feedback that I've been given, and we'll continue to make improvements based on the feedback. So I also plan on doing a few things over the next few months, such as redesigning my logo, the banner, and making a website for some content that people who follow the channel can reference for information that I will be sharing. So thanks again, and let's get to the topic here at hand. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to benchmark a ZFS partitioning scheme versus an EXT4 partitioning scheme for a file system, and I'll do this side by side on a Ubuntu 19.10 distribution installation, and kind of see what kind of results we get. Now, I know I've heard that some people claim that the ZFS file system may have a faster booting time than the EXT4, which I haven't really noticed this at all. Actually, if anything, I think the EXT4 is a little quicker at booting. And what I got here is two installations of Ubuntu 19.10 side by side. As you can see here up at the top, hopefully. Ubuntu EXT4 on the right hand side here, and then Ubuntu ZFS here on the left hand side. And what we have is we'll run a benchmark, and that benchmark is going to be by using the disk utility that comes standard with Ubuntu. These are minimal installations. They have nothing else besides just the very basics. So let me start up the disk utility on both. Here we go. So you can see here on the left, the partitioning scheme is quite a bit different than the one on the right, and hopefully you can tell, but it says EXT4 here on the right, and then on the left you have a ZFS members and some swap. So they're quite different from each other. And what we can do here is there's actually an option to go ahead and benchmark these side by side here. We'll have to do one by one because we don't want to access the hard drive or solid state drive with both at the same time. I don't think that's a fair comparison. If anyone's watching, please let me know if you can hear me. It'd be good to know. Anyways, what we'll do is go ahead and hit on this little cogs, the cogs here, which are settings, and there's a lot of options here with the disk utility manager that comes standard with Ubuntu, but what I'm interested in is actually benchmarking the partition. So here at the bottom, if I hit on benchmark partition, you can see that I've done one in the past, but I'm more interested in doing a new one. And we'll do the same benchmark for both, but let's go ahead and start with the ZFS partition first. And the first option we get is the number of samples that we want to use. I'm just going to use 1,000 samples here. And then you can actually put in what sample size you want in megabytes. So I will go ahead and do 100 megabytes, and I'll also perform a write benchmark as well as a read benchmark. We can get both at the same time if we use that checkbox. And then you can go ahead and put what the number of samples is. So let's see, for the access time. and I will go ahead and use 10,000. And this should be fairly good for representing the write and read access speeds as well as times here. So we'll get an average at the end of this benchmark. So I'm going to go ahead and hit start the benchmark. It's going to ask me for a password. We'll put that in. Let's see here. Password. All right, and now the benchmark has started. So you can see that it's running through the samples here at the bottom. We're at about 100 samples now, and it's giving me an average read rate as well as an average write rate. So we'll let this finish up here as it's going. It might take a little bit. I do have quite a bit running on the computer right now, as you can see, 2 virtual machines as well as the stream. So it's not the quickest, but it will give us a good representation of what's going on between the 2 partitioning schemes. So we'll let this finish up here, give it a few more moments, and then kind of just look at the data here. So now we're finished up, and you can see that the average read rate for the ZFS partitioning scheme is around 1.7 gigabytes per second over 1,000 samples, and the average write rate is around 795.5 megabytes per second at 1,000 samples, and the average access time below here is about 0.14 milliseconds over 10,000 samples, and it's pretty good. What we'll do now is we'll do the same except for the EXT4 partitioning scheme and kind of compare the two, because what I've heard is that people tend to think that the ZFS is quicker than the EXT4 when it comes to read and write times, which may be true, but I think that requires quite a bit of optimization of the ZFS partitioning scheme if you want it to be faster. Now, I don't think it is faster out of the box, so let's go ahead and try the EXT4 now. So again, I'm going to hit the settings, hit the benchmark partition, and I'm going to start a benchmark. So I believe we did 1,000 here at 110,000 samples. We'll do the write as well in this one. And let's go ahead and run the benchmark now. It's going to ask me for my password. And I'm going to go ahead and put that in. Target is busy. Okay. Must have something messed up here. Hopefully we can. Let's see if we just do a write. Sorry, a read. Password. Alright, for some reason it's not letting me do a write over there. But we'll go ahead and run the read and compare it. Strangely enough, I was able to run that earlier. Maybe what I'll do is I'll shut down this other one. And we'll run them one by one here in a moment as well. I'll go ahead and shut down one and run the other and vice versa, just to kind of see if we get any kind of different results here. We're almost done here. We got about 10% left on the EXT4 one. And here we go. So looking at this, it's saying that the sample size was 100 megabytes and it had an average read of 1.5 gigabytes per second. and an average access time of 0.15 milliseconds over the 10,000 samples. So I'm interested in what will happen if I go ahead and only run one of these virtual machines at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and close out and shut down one of the virtual machines, and I'll shut down the EXT4 one, power that off. And here we're running the ZFS one, and we'll try to benchmark again. I'm not sure why I wasn't able to run the the write on the EXT4, but let's start the benchmark once more here. So we'll do 1,000 samples again at 100 megabytes and do 10,000 samples and start the benchmark over again. See what kind of results we get this time here. Alright, we're about halfway done over here. It's probably due to the fact that the EXT4 file system can't be unmounted, and that's why we're running into issues. I didn't realize that, but the ZFS allows you to do it, while as the other one does not. So the average read rate, I guess that's the only ones that we can compare at the moment. Again, here is a 1.3 gigabytes per second over 1,000 samples. The average write rate is 602.4 megabytes per second at 1,000 samples, and the average access time is 0.14. And I'm going to write that down real quick because we will be trying this again. Read, and the average write is 602.4. Alright, and now let's go ahead, go back and restart the EXT4. Now let me shut this down properly here. Power it off, and then we will rerun the EXT4 one. And right now we're booting up here. Give this a moment. Logging in real quick. And we will rerun that benchmark with the EXT4 in just one virtual machine instead of two, just to see if we get a difference here. Perhaps a better way in order to do the benchmarking would be to use a live disk instead of a actual installed Ubuntu distribution. So let's go ahead and get into disks again. And now that we're in, we'll go ahead to the settings and do a benchmark on the partition. And let's start the benchmark using, again, a transfer rate with the number of samples, 1,000. 100 megabytes. We cannot perform the write benchmark with the EXT4. I'll do 10,000 samples of access time and then put in the password and start going here. So as you can see, we are averaging about 1.2 gigabytes per second at the moment. And it's gone up to about 1.4 at the moment, 1.5. We're about 50% done here. And after this is done, we'll talk about what we have found here in the comparisons. We've got about 25% more. Hopefully you can hear me all right. All right, so now that the benchmark is finished, we can see that it had an average read rate of 1.6 gigabytes per second over 1,000 samples, and the average access time on this was 0.13 milliseconds over 10,000 samples. Now that is in comparison to 1.3 gigabytes per second on the ZFS partition scheme, with a 0.14 millisecond access time. So what this shows you is that ZFS isn't necessarily faster out of the box without any optimization in comparison to the EXT4 partitioning scheme. The everyday user should really take this into consideration when choosing their file system and installing a Linux distribution. Now that, with that being said, there are other reasons that you might want to go with ZFS versus EXT4. I would honestly suggest most people to go with the standard EXT4 partitioning scheme because it's what everyone's used to, and there's not much of a benefit, if any, for everyday users after seeing this benchmarking here. You can actually get faster access times with the EXT4 formatted file system. So where ZFS tends to shine is really in scalability, data protection, and flexibility that it brings to its users. Many people using server versions of Linux might want to consider using ZFS partitioned file systems, since it really has both a logical disk management system as well as file management built right in. So this makes it easier to change sizes of your volumes and control the file system without having to reinstall, again, which is great for servers. If you're an everyday user and you just plan on keeping one storage drive, you don't necessarily care about changing sizes in the future. So the EXT4 file system that's standard is a fine choice, really. And I've also heard some people have claimed that ZFS has a faster booting time than EXT4, which I definitely haven't noticed. In fact, I'd say the opposite is true, that EXT4 boots quicker than ZFS. Now, that's with the standard install and not really optimizing either partitioning scheme. But let's just take a look here at the ZFS and kind of realize what it looks like in comparison. So we're looking right now at the EXT4 version, partitioning scheme I should say, sorry. You can see that there's really just the one partition, and it's a 34 gigabyte volume of a file system. Let's see if I can start gparted real quick and look at this in a little closer. Not sure if gparted comes standard here. It does not, but we can easily install it. So let's go ahead and start our terminal. And I think it's sudo apt-get install gparted. Put your password in. Yes, I do. this will take just a moment to install here. Just kind of want to look at the two partitioning schemes here side by side so you can kind of get a feel for how each one looks. So now that we have gparted, I believe I can start it. And here we are. So here you can see that we have a partition under dev SVA1 with the file system type of EXT4, and we have just 1 megabyte here unallocated, but you can see it's one complete flow partitioning scheme. There's not many different logical volumes or anything like that. Whereas let's go to the ZFS4 one now, or sorry, the ZFS one now, thinking EXT4. So I'm going to power down this machine and boot up the other one so we can kind of look. Power off. And while that's powering off, let's start the ZFS one. So it's interesting that Ubuntu 19.10 has now offered this as, well, has offered the ZFS partitioning scheme with their standard installer. I'm kind of surprised that they just didn't stick to doing that with their server edition, but it's something new that they're trying out, and more power to them. It gives users more flexibility. And since there's a bunch of distributions based off of Ubuntu, I'm sure we're going to be seeing the ZFS released for a bunch of other distributions here soon. So it's something new to explore. Let's go ahead and do the same here. We'll install gparted so we can kind of look at the partitioning scheme here. So sudo apt-get install gparted. Put our password in. Yes, I want to install it. I appreciate you guys watching me. It's very nice of you. Hopefully you're following along here. We got gparted running, so gparted is really great for resizing things and kind of looking at your logical volumes here. So here ZFS is, again, I guess we can't really look at what the partitioning scheme here looks like, so let's go back to our disks. I think it shows the logical volume a little better here. And yeah, as you can see here, hopefully, that there is an R pool, which is the partition 1 of the ZFS file system. And then you have a partition 5, which is a swap location. And then you have partition 6 here, which is a type of free BSD. And then you have another free BSD where you can store all your data. And the interesting part here is I know that EXT4 actually has the data storage, and then afterwards it has the swap space. So this makes it hard to actually change the amount of storage that you want unless you install an LVM type EXT4, which it's not really good for virtual machines and or servers, because if you want to extend the amount of space that you have for your platform, it's not easily done. So that's where this ZFS really shines. Instead of installing the LVM version, it comes standard with this, and you can resize it however you want. It makes it really nice and convenient to use with servers. Yeah. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this, kind of going through and doing a little bit of benchmarking and talking about the ZFS versus the EXT4 partitioning scheme. Let me know what you think about this Linux talk, And if you have any questions, if you have comments, suggestions, please post them in the comments section, and I'll also make sure to read them as soon as they come in. Also make sure to subscribe for future videos and make sure to like the video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it and you join me in future streams. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.